Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Thea here. Welcome to the Man Within podcast. I am in the Impactus studios. I guess we're in Burlington, Ontario.
That's right.
And so I've had the president of Impactus, Dean Brenton, on the podcast before. Today I have Jordan Hardum, who you do a little bit of everything with Impactus, don't you?
Yeah, not quite the president, but they get me doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So Jordan's amazing. We're gonna have a really robust conversation and talking about kind of just where the state of affairs are with men in the church, men in society at large, and we're both young fathers, so we might go back and forth on that for a little bit. But Jordan, welcome to the podcast, man. Great to have you here.
Dude, it's an honor. We've had you on our podcast, but I've never been in this seat,
I know.
So it's kind of a new experience.
Way overdue. You've had me at events and all that kind of stuff, and so it's great to finally have you on here.
Cool, man. Thanks for the opportunity.
So last time I had Dean on, you guys were in the middle of a transition from Promise Keepers Canada to Impactus. That transition is well complete now, and you guys are in it for a couple of years. How did everything go, and how are things with Impactus?
Yeah, for years we were Promise Keepers Canada, kind of like a sister organization to Promise Keepers USA, right? And so for years we led large events across Canada in stadiums and churches and things like that.
And I should say, my life was changed at a Promise Keepers Canada event probably in 2010.
Wow.
Like, I was a young Christian man figuring out a lot in life, in this arena with like probably 10,000 other guys, and the Holy Spirit really moved on my heart that day. Like, I still remember it.
Wow. Yeah, we have a ton of stories like that over the years of dads, especially bringing their sons and things like that.
Definitely, yeah.
And so that was kind of our legacy, and that was our story for a long time. It was really events-based, and the decision was made to move to this new brand called Impactus, which means like a pressing in, and really for a number of reasons, but one of them was mainly because we wanted to shift from more of an event-based model to more of a discipleship focused model. And so if you think about, like, we can swoop in and fly into an event, throw a great catalytic, emotional, fantastic event that transformed lives like yourselves, but then we were just like flying out the next week, and you were left to sort out probably like, okay, what do I do with this experience now? And so Impactus really had a vision of becoming a ministry that walked alongside guys in a daily devotional, training local men's leaders to disciple men in their church. And there's not a lot of material out there for men's leaders. You find children's ministry and youth ministry and women's ministry and worship ministry and all other ministries, but men's ministry is kind of under-resourced. And so our hope was to go from this event-based, and we still do events, and you've been at them, and we welcome you to attend one if you're in Canada, but we really wanted to disciple men and help men disciple men. And so they changed the name to Impactus. Took us a while to get there, over a long historic ministry with a great legacy to communicate.
I've definitely had to explain to some people too, like, what's Impactus? Like, oh, it used to be Promise Keepers Canada. It's like, I remember those guys.
So we still have to tell the story. But it also allowed us to go global and to go online.
Yes.
And it was really interesting, God's timing. A part of the dream was to go beyond the borders of Canada and to move our ministry online. And we were in this transition right at the beginning of 2020. And so God really positioned us well to pivot really quickly.
Talk about timing.
So we've been kind of ministering online through daily devotionals, podcasts like this, leadership resources for men's leaders, and all sorts of different things. Yeah,
your guys' stuff is really good. I always feel very empowered when I'm on the Impactus website or at the events. I've been able to speak at a couple, and like, you guys really, I think, know how to make men feel respected. That's so important for guys, isn't it? And also, but feel like equipped to, step into their God-given calling and all that.
Yeah, part of what we say is we want to see every man become, grow, and live as a disciple of Jesus, right? To help them, equip them to live lives of godly purpose. And so that equipping piece is really important. It's easy there's lots of inspiration around.
Yes.
Obviously there's lots of podcasts that probably your listeners listen to, and one of yours being one of them. But we really want to focus in on, like, how do we practically equip the guy to live the life and lead the ministry.
I love it. So with that in mind, because obviously, like, we serve men here as well. You guys have working with men for decades now. And there's been a shift, right? Because when you guys made the transition in 2020, it kind of wasn't cool to be a guy.
Yeah, no,
right?
Definitely not.
Toxic masculinity and all of that. Like, it was a crazy time. And then obviously the political climate has changed, and that's definitely shifted a lot of things. I guess I'm curious, from your perspective, like, what are you guys observing around, like, what's the messaging around men, and what are some of the trends in just general masculinity right now?
Yeah, you're not kidding. 5 years ago, the landscape around gender conversations is completely different.
Night and day.
And I mean, on a plus side, men are returning to faith in the church in particular on, like,
it's
crazy rates. I got some stats here just to share with you.
Okay.
Right now, 43% of men attend church regularly. 43%. Okay, that's kind of shocking in comparison to 36% of women. Okay, so that's a report from as early as 2025 from Barna. And young men are leading the shift. So 46% of Gen Z men report attending church in the past week. 55% of millennial men attend church in the last week. And the comparison to women is actually much lower. And so there's verifiable data that says, there's a lot of noise out there about like quiet revival and our young people coming to church. Well, the data, there's enough data to say, okay, something exciting is happening.
Jeez.
And so that's really, really interesting, because prior to this season, it was looking pretty bleak for men. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So why do you think that is? What's happened?
Well, I read an article from the Gospel Coalition recently that I thought framed it in a way I hadn't heard before. Okay. And they talked about how young men in particular were have, up until recently, felt very poor in spirit. And Scott Galloway, who's a researcher and has been on a lot of talk shows and stuff, he outlines this very clearly. Like, here's some stats. Men are 4 more times likely to die by suicide than women. They are 3 times more likely to die by drug overdose. In the U.S., they're 12 times more likely to be incarcerated. If you think of like relationships, there's this thing called the male friendship recession. I don't know if you've heard that language.
I haven't heard that language, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so I think it's like 15% of men say that they have no close friends. Jeez. That's up from 3%. Right? And so you have a 12% increase since 1990. And so basically you have 15% of men saying they have no close friends, or 30% of men say that they've had a meaningful conversation in the past week with a friend. Wow. And so there is this element of male loneliness that I think is kind of causing people trouble. If you think of, like, in the States, 1 in 4 young men grow up without a dad themselves. Yeah. And then think about a lot of these men, if you were going to school from like 2000 onward, grew up in a day that said masculinity was toxic. Yeah. But there was no real alternative provided for that. Yeah. And so without a lack of leaders or role models, with masculinity being called toxic and trying to find a hill to climb or something to kind of lay their life down for, young men were kind of poor in spirit. And so they lacked meaning, they lacked identity, they lacked community. Yeah. And so now I think they're looking at basically the church and spirituality as a whole and saying, well, you know what, the secularism and this cultural moment we're in never got me the results that I was told. Yeah. And so when you've kind of like tested the waters on everything and everything you've been promised doesn't come through, it really leaves you looking like, where else can I find meaning and stuff like that? And the church kind of fills that gap really nicely.
It's really interesting, because I think so guys attending church more regularly is awesome. I'm a little bit surprised to hear that women are attending church less, because I think there was like always this ongoing joke that if you were going to write a Christian book, you always write it to women, because they're going to be 80% of your buyers, because they were kind of running the church for a while. So that it sounds like that has also shifted now.
Yeah, and that's something we have to pay attention to, right? Because like for the past, 10 or 15 years, we've been praying for men to return to church. Yeah, and we don't want to be caught celebrating. Meanwhile, like there's an open door and exit of young women leaving our church. Yeah. And so that's interesting. I wonder if some of that is due to hard to reconcile some of the compassionate and social justice hearts of many of our lady friends. They're having trouble to reconcile that against the institution of the church and the harms that the church has done in the past. And so I just think as leaders, we've just got to keep our eye open to this, or we're going to be writing books and having ministry saying, where are all the women? Yeah. I think about when I was in university, there was a missions board of all the trips in the university, of all the different mission trips that people were going on, and they had pictures of all the teams. Well, it's like 10 teams. Every team member besides one was a man, right? And so it's like all women besides this one guy named, I think his name was Ben. And someone wrote in big markers, where are all the men? Wow. And, as a man walking like through the halls of my university, that really spoke to me. But I think if we're not careful, we could be saying, where are all the women in the next in the next decade? And so something to pay attention to for sure.
So now that men are in the church, what are the challenges that guys are experiencing? Because it's so funny. Like, I mean, as much as it's important that obviously guys are getting saved and entering the church, what are you observing when you guys are putting on your events, or when guys are reaching out asking for resources? Where do guys need help?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. There's a few things I think, opportunities that the church has to consider. The first is like, what you bring men in with is kind of what they kind of expect, right? And so one of the challenges that we're facing is like the pseudo Christian mainstream message that's out there. And so
I see.
Every like podcaster now is like getting baptized or is exploring faith, which we're stoked about, we're excited about. But what comes with that is like these like other worldviews that kind of get mixed in and things like that. And so you really just got to keep like Jesus at the center. Yeah. And so unfortunately, part of the growth of men coming back to church is also like I think it's fair to say, and this is my own personal opinion, is sort of political, right?
Yeah.
And so they're watching the culture wars,
Yeah.
and they're saying, okay, I want to
take a side.
I want to be more conservative,
Yeah.
and so sometimes these like pseudo political views get kind of pulled into their understanding of Christianity and things like that, and so that's something that we just have to kind of be mindful of, and just keep them pointed towards Jesus, who was an embodied male, who lived a life as a male, and is an ultimate example of masculinity. Like we truly believe that. And so he flipped tables, right, in one verse. And then most of his teaching was about like turning the cheek and being self-sacrifice for the sake of others, like women and children. And so I think pointing men towards those things is really important.
Yes.
Just getting them into the word, understanding that that's actually the guidebook. It's not like all these other voices.
Yes.
And I know some of the men that I've worked with, one of my biggest challenges to them is like to go to a good church, lock in under a good pastor, and try and see all other media and influences as just simply like supplemental to the shepherd that is God has put over you.
Good.
Because otherwise it's very easy to get very confused.
Yeah, and it is confusing. Like, I mean, where I've witnessed kind of the dynamics we're talking about has been in the podcasting world, where, you know, there's certain podcasts that I've been friends with for years, and then like I'm like, oh wow, he's a Christian. Oh, that guy's a Christian. You know, like some of them are messaging me like, hey man, you know I like kind of brushed off the religious stuff when we talked, but I just gave my life to Jesus. Like I'm seeing this happen a lot,
which is exciting,
which is amazing. Then you listen to their podcast, they're still dropping F-bombs. Like obviously like sanctification is a process, but I do agree that like without good leadership, and I think that's where the local church can really play a role, you're going to get these kind of mixed messaging. So for people that are looking for a local church, do you have any guidelines for that? Because one thing, this has not even been our intention, but Deep Clean seems to we get a lot of guys who have been church hurt. Right. Sometimes they're in between churches, but that's kind of like the facade. Like they're in between churches, but they've been in between churches for 7 years, you know? Or they're like kind of done with the institution of church. So we hear a lot of that stuff. I'll tell you, like the amount of recovery stories we have where it's like, that guy quit porn, he stopped yelling at his kids, and he started going to church again. There
you go.
That story is very, very common. Any guidelines for guys who want to get back to church?
Yeah, well, I would say just to your audience in particular,
please.
Remembering that we're on your podcast, like I had to kind of shift in my mind here that we're actually on yours. I think the guys in your group may have trouble actually finding a church that shows the same vulnerability they get in kind of your program, like the Inner Circle or the people that are part of your actual recovery program. And I know not everyone that listens to your podcast is in your Inner Circle. Sure. But if you are a part of Sathia's Inner Circle, the vulnerability that you're experiencing is going to be quite unique. Yeah. And it's very important that you don't compare the local church that you go to to that, because I think it's really hard to find. And so if I were to give some judgment calls on how to find a local church, the first is, I would say, do they preach the Bible? Right. The scriptures talk about like in the days towards the end, there'll be like teaching that just like itches our ears or scratches our ears. It means like teaching that we just want to hear. And so if you find a pastor that you agree with everything he says, I would say just pause for a moment, right? And so if they don't challenge you and they're just kind of, I would say just consider that. The other thing is, so do they preach God's word? That's really important. Yeah. Do they model a life of humility and the type of person you want to become, the leadership there?
What would be indicators of it? Like, especially if someone goes to a church of like 2,000 people. Well, anything that they could look, or how do you make that judgment call?
Yeah, I think that's hard. I mean, obviously, there's lots of churches, especially in the U.S. Like in Canada, our mega churches are like 1,000. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's pretty good in Canada. Yeah, if you have a church of 1,000 in Canada, you're crushing it. You're up there. Yeah, yeah. But if you're in a larger church, I'm not exactly sure how the leadership model would work. But I'd say if you interact with whoever they have in positions of leadership, and you think their life is worth emulating. Yeah. Obviously, social media and things like that are a facade in many ways, and so you really got to get to know people, and that's the hard thing about church, is you have to make a decision eventually. Is this church worth checking out beyond just, does the sermon sound good and the worship sound good? And so it means plugging into some sort of a community. Yeah. So once you get, you look at all the options, I think too, you have to ask yourself, what are you looking for? Like for some people, they're in a season of, they need discipleship. Yeah. Right? And by discipleship, I mean like they need to learn the scriptures, learn how to walk in obedience to Jesus. Yeah. And so if that's the case, then you might need to go to a smaller church where you get a little bit more attention.
Good point.
Right. But if you are in need of, you and your wife are in need of real community, and then a bigger church that has more programs for you and your kids, that might be more important. And so I think without being too consumeristic, ask yourself, where are you in your discipleship journey or in your following Jesus journey, and maybe help find a church that fits that. Yeah.
No, I'm really glad you said that. I think the consumerism thing is very important as well. Like you don't want to be a church shopper. Yeah. And there is an element of like, sometimes you also just have to ask, like, where's God leading you? Because maybe God takes you to a church that has terrible programming, and you're the person who's supposed to go and fix that, like you don't know. But I love the guidance there. And I would say for our guys, I think what you just touched on at the end is very important, where you can find community. Because like the one thing that we always tout in our communities is the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection, right? And so being able to have places where you can connect meaningfully, like I'm thinking of one guy in particular who had that story of like, is treating his kids better, quit pornography, and is going to church again. And for him, he always talks about his guys at church.
There you go.
Right. And it's not even that they have deep conversations every single time. Like they just go hunting together, or they fish together, or they'll, they just hang out together and break bread and watch football. But they get that time together. And I think, I know you have some stats on this, I think, right? About like sort of is it the loneliness of guys and just how deprived we are of friendships and everything else?
Just I may have mentioned it earlier or not, but 15% of men say they have no close friends.
Yes. Yeah, you did mention it earlier. Yeah. So is the church a place where guys could expect to find close friends or eventually make close friends as well? Yeah,
well, it's interesting. As you're talking about this, I think, one thing I would say to guys is like pastors come and go, right? Like sometimes you have a pastor that has a long tenure of like 15 to 10 years, but and that's rare. Like,
dude, my dad was told, he was like 5 years max, and then you move on.
Then you have to move on.
Don't make friends. Don't get their phone numbers. I mean, it's a different age now, but yeah.
And so I just say that to say, like, if you can find a church that values God's word, obviously, and like I think makes room for the Spirit of God to move, and you have and you can get along and feel in deep community with the people. I don't think you have to look much further. Like, I don't think you have to overcomplicate it, because the pastors will come and go. I'm a pastor of a church, right? And so what's important for me is that people don't come and join me, right? Not that I have any intentions on going anywhere, but if for some reason I got hit by a proverbial bus, right? I want to know that these people have meaningful community with one another. And so if you can find a church that preaches the word, worships God passionately, and you can genuinely have friendship, I would say go for it. So to answer your question, like, can guys find friendship in a local church? I would say yes, but it takes a lot of work, and it takes putting yourself out there, initiating. Like, guys are terrible at initiating. Like,
so bad,
and just saying, like, it seems weird to say, hey guys, do you want to be friends? Right? But like sometimes you just have to say, like, just name it. Like, look, we're the same age, or maybe you're not even the same age. Maybe you're in the same life cycle, or maybe you're not. But just initiating and saying, hey, would you come over to our place for dinner is a good start, or go hunting or fishing or whatever. Because if you just wait, the invite's probably not coming.
It's so true though. And I think this is where, like, I love what you guys go back to, is like even talking about men being leaders. Right. And this is the reality. I was actually talking to my team about this yesterday, is like, hey, if there's something that you really want, whether it's in our business or there's something you want in life, you need to go after it. Like that's part of the mandate of men, is like, you get after it. You can't wait for everything to be served to you on a silver platter. It's not how it works. And anything that's really worth having in your life, you're probably gonna have to fight for. And that's God's design.
And I would say this is just like such a great opportunity for you to lead in your marriage if you're married. Like for like so many men are dragged out the door by their wives to go to church. And the quiet confidence of just knowing, like, if she didn't initiate, we're going to church anyway. Like, you know what I mean? Like
100%.
That speaks so loudly. That speaks so loudly to your wife and your kids. And I think this, some of the stats, it might not be a stat or more of a truism, but like they say that kids will take like and practice like 50% of the faith you practiced. And so like, wow, if that's true, I think about my parents, they were in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Tuesday and Wednesday. Jeez. Right. And so now I go Sundays. Right. And so if my kids go 50% of what I do, right.
Well, and you're in like a parachurch ministry Monday to Friday. So,
but you know what I'm saying? Like, so I think like if you guys prioritize your like church going and pushing through, even when the small group is awkward, I don't know about you, Cynthia, but there's been many small groups I've been a part of that, like, you get in the car after and you're like, oh, okay, we're still hoping and believing that this is going to become something. Because right now it'll
get better.
It'll get better, right? Like
we'll go into it.
And so if you got to go with that expectation that you're building something with these people rather than just kind of going to receive.
There's been like kind of a long-term play, I guess, right?
Totally.
So what about on the local church side of things? So churches now are getting more men than ever before. Not than ever before, but certainly in the last 30 years, more men. Kyle Thompson on Done to Life, he's been on the podcast. He would say like a lot of churches are notorious for like the Jesus is my boyfriend songs and, messages that are probably a little bit more feely and emotional. So are there things that churches need to change, or maybe you can put your prophetic hat on? Are there things that you predict will change in the church to accommodate this increase in men attending?
Yeah, I mean, it depends who you ask. Some people will say that like those like, why is the carpet in all the churches pink? It's like, well, because the ladies design the church buildings and things like that. And so some of our songs, I'll admit, are totally like in the wrong key and in the wrong like feel for guys to really connect with.
Very true.
And so I think that is something to consider. And I think hopefully the leadership that you have at the church is keeping that aware. I would say, obviously, sing songs that, are not all touchy-feely. I was at a church recently, and this is not a criticism of this band, or I don't even know who wrote it, but it was about like, I lean back into the loving arms. And I'm like, I'm thinking, and this was a Sunday where people were encouraged to bring one friend, so the church was packed, right?
Okay.
And I'm looking around like, the guys in this room, now that I'm wearing like my men's ministry Impactus hat, they're going, where the heck am I?
Yeah. Right? Why would I sing this song?
I'm a seeker. I'm new to church. What does this mean? But then, you turn the corner and you sing a song like, our God is greater, our God is stronger. You talk about like God being a strong tower. It's like, obviously you got to find balance, but I think there is choices in worship that can be done that make a big difference, especially if you're seeking to, increase your attendance or see people growing like from their baby faith, right? Like these people that are there a long time, they're like, these songs come and go and they mean something to certain people, but for me, I can let it pass. But for new Christians, some of these things can become a real barrier. I think too, like for churches, if we're speaking to churches, I would say your preaching has to talk about real issues. Like if you kind of are like, and of course the church isn't meant to be political or kind of dive into like hot topic, like take a position on some of these things, but sometimes you do have to make a stand. And I think men are looking to see like, what's this guy made of? Yeah. Like, is this guy willing to actually say like, or does he just like close his eyes and ears and pretend like that the world is not burning outside, right? Yeah. And so we've had some things happen in the Christian faith recently. I think pastors in particular have to be willing to either talk about it in the way, but also if not that, have a conversation with someone that's curious. Like some are like, well, I stay Swedish or whatever the case, like I don't have a left or right side or whatever, not even politically, but I think you got to be willing to talk about issues, and not only just political, not just like cultural issues, but the real issues people are facing. And so you're talking about like financial trouble, pornography, marriage issues. And if you're talking about those things, I think men will say, okay, this is a place that I want to grow. Because one thing, Cynthia, we see is men want to be better. Yeah. Right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Yeah. And so if you are equipping men in the different spheres that they're in, like fatherhood or being a husband, or even just like what it means to be a Christian employee, right? Men would resonate with those types of things. Yeah. And when you call them to something, like for a while, like we had talked about, it was like a sin to say like men were protectors. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's like, well, hey, whoa. Women don't need protection.
I don't need no man.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, well, now actually, I think we're all going, that was a bad idea. Right. I think men like to hear like, hey, you actually, for the sake of women and children around you, God has called you to lead in a certain way. Yes. And I think that kind of makes men feel alive a little bit.
Is there a discrepancy between like Gen Z men who are really coming back to the church versus you and I are millennial men, Gen X, the boomers that are before us? Is there a difference there in kind of expectations around church or what church should look like?
Well, yeah, I think there is. One thing that we're seeing in Gen Z men is like a real greater interest in like the transcendent, like the idea of the Holy Spirit moving or working in some sort of capacity is a lot less threatening to Gen Z than it is to older men. And so, for example,
are we talking about like the supernatural, like signs and wonders?
Yeah, signs and wonders and power of God moving, and just for example, like we've had like I pastor a very small church, right? We probably have like 60 to 80 people on a Sunday morning.
Right. It used to be smaller though. You're turning that thing around, bro.
It's growing, which by God's grace. But what's interesting is the amount of young men that come in by themselves. Dude, it's unheard of.
Like a single guy?
Yeah, a guy just walking in and sitting in our seats. And I'm like, how did you find us? Why are you here? And you get chatting with them. And usually it's because they listen to some content online, whether it's a podcaster or an apologist or something that caught their attention. Yeah. And truthfully, after Charlie Kirk's death, that was actually, we had a number of interests. We had like the week of his death, we had 4 calls for baptism from strangers. Oh, right? Wow. So there was a real response. Yes. But what's interesting is they'll come in and sit in and I'll be like, why are you here? Like, they're like, well, I want to take communion, or I like this church because you have a cross in the sanctuary. And so they're not coming to be entertained. They're not coming for like a rock star concert, right? Yeah. They're not coming to be like for the best music in town. They're coming because they want this like transcendent experience. They actually want to feel as though they're practicing a religion. And this is my own personal take. This is not an Impactus take by no means. But I think for years we kind of use this language, not in practice, but in general, we're like, it's not a religion, it's a relationship, which it is.
Yes.
And I understand the meaning of that. But what I'm seeing anecdotally as a pastor and amongst my friends is young men are actually okay with the idea of
religion,
something that actually demands something of me.
Yes.
Something that actually calls me like to bow on my knees.
Yeah.
And so Gen Z men, they seem to be a lot more curious about this,
Yeah.
of like practicing a religion, and especially around the Sunday morning experience and daily rhythms. And so they're not looking to be entertained or programmatic. They're like, I'm here because I want God, not because I, want some cool program or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually why there's been a big resurgence in Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah. 100%.
Right? Because it's like Gregorian chants.
Yeah.
And there's like, I mean, you get some really like manly men. Just the expression of worship is incredibly masculine. Like I'm having to ask now. So when I do hear about these podcasters or someone says they give their life to Jesus, I'm like, Catholic, Orthodox, or Protestant? Like I'm kind of curious. And actually Catholicism as well has had a huge resurgence. So so I think what you're hitting on it makes a lot of sense. Really, really important.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing young men, they want their relationship with God to feel like a relationship with the supreme higher power God. Like one young man's like, why do you guys only do communion once a month?
Oh wow.
Like, what a weird question from a young man. Like aren't you supposed to ask me like when's the next like potluck, right? Like but it's like no, I want God.
They want the traditions, yeah. That's actually really cool too, because I do think that's happening in our society is a bit of a return to traditions. Like traditional values, but I think even just tradition, like you said, like we've been so anti-religion in the church, like gets the religiosity, and we're not religious, we're whatever, we're spiritual or faith-based,
or even just
whatever.
like putting any sort of like expectation on people, out of fear of pushing them away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Where now you're saying like the men actually want that.
Yeah. Like I think about my Sunday school teachers taught Sunday school every single Sunday. Every single Sunday. Now we're like, okay, are you able to do like one Sunday on, 6 Sundays off?
Yeah.
Right? And so what I'm just seeing is people going like, no, like I'm not here to like ask me.
I want to dip my toes in, like
ask me.
Let me
like,
do it.
Yeah, let me do this. Give me this.
Yeah.
And so that's what I don't know. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Let's talk about fatherhood a little bit.
Sure.
So you have 3 kids. Oldest is 5, youngest is 11 months.
Yeah.
Yep. Just got over the stomach bug.
Oh man. Yeah. It was a doozy.
Bro, my kid was puking this morning as I was walking out. I'm like,
thank you for sharing.
Sorry,
this.
babe. Yeah.
Right over the Christmas holidays.
Oh, dude, I know. What are you learning about fatherhood? Going, transitioning to 3 kids. You started pastoring. That's a really cool story about how God led you to this church and you just started serving and really opened up doors there. And then you're full time here with Impactus. So how are you juggling everything, dude?
Yeah, it's busy. And I try not to say the word busy a lot. Like it's full.
Yes.
Maybe a better way to say it.
Yeah.
God is moving in all those spheres, right? And which is really cool. I think the one thing that I'm kind of learning recently is like just seeing like fathering as like a real mirror, right? Like oftentimes my frustration with my kids' behavior is more a me issue than it is a them issue. So that's been really something I'm kind of working through. Like most times when I'm triggered, it's because of me, not them. The other thing that I'm just recognizing is like just the incredible opportunity of just like being undistracted with them. Like recently, my daughter, she came up with this idea of like talkie time, where like all we do is talk.
Okay.
Right. And so like
she talks and you just listen,
well,
or it's a 2-way?
It's 2-way street.
Okay.
And so like
right.
at nighttime we do talkie time, right? And we were kind of trying to find a new rhythm because obviously I can't just like sit and talk at bedtime. I think it might be actually a distraction of going to bed. But we'll just sit on her bed and at that time she's had time to like digest her day, and I'll just ask her like, hey, like what stood out to you today? Like just that like small 15-minute window is kind of like made me realize the power of like putting my phone down, right?
Yeah.
And so that's been something I'm kind of walking through too, is like how many moments am I missing a day because I don't have those rhythms kind of in place.
Do you get that a lot? Like, are guys at Impactus, are they inquiring about like how to be more present with their kids or how to be better fathers? And like, is there like low hanging fruit advice that you give people, like put your phone away or that kind of thing? Because I know for me, I'm good with my tech boundaries, but my mind sometimes is still racing. So like that's something I've been really focused on. And there's some days where I'm just like, how did I've been holding Josiah for like 5 minutes and I haven't even looked at him, because I'm thinking about something, I'm trying to solve a problem. I don't know. Yeah. I'm asking personally, like any advice or what you got for me?
I think you kind of nailed it. Like, it's funny. I work from home mostly. Right. And sometimes I'll be like, I said to Rachel, I'm like, hey, like I work from home. Like I'm home all day with the kids. And if like the kid's crying, I'll jump up and I'll help or whatever the case may be. And my wife in her loving way just said, yeah, Jordan, just because you're home doesn't mean you're home. Right, because sometimes the mind is spinning and things like that. And so, man, obviously the tech is a low hanging fruit. One area that I don't necessarily practice myself, but I've seen it really work well is this idea of no phone zones. Okay. And so no phone zones would be like there's just certain areas where your phone just cannot enter. And so some people would do it like their bedroom, right, just for the sake of their relationship with their wife. Others like the kitchen table, like it's just like the phone doesn't sit on the kitchen table at any time. So some of those like habits and practices with tech, I think are really good. I see like sometimes you use like this email thing that says like I'm using inbox while I'm away or something.
Inbox when ready or something.
Inbox when ready. I'm like, oh man, this guy,
I try to be really intentional about it. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay.
When I saw it was inspiring, I'm like, oh man, maybe I need that.
Yeah. Well, dude, the inbox is a huge drag, right? Yeah. Like I don't have email on my phone, all of that stuff. Yeah. The phone is the thing I'm the most conscious of because it's so accessible. Yeah. Like even getting to my laptop is still like, it's enough of a barrier to entry that I won't do it sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, if you're just like pulling out your laptop to go on Instagram, it feels pretty pathetic.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know that because I've done that. Yeah. So,
we all have, right? Yeah. But then when it's on your phone, it just feels so accessible. So I've always tried to pay attention to that. It's Christmas time, at least at the time of this recording. One thing I talk about with a lot of dads lately is traditions. So we are obviously just talking about traditions in a religious context. But I'm curious for you, like, do you guys have any family traditions around Christmas, or how do you make Christmas special for your kids? Yeah,
that's something that my wife and I have been wrestling with recently, and this is where like I think social media can be a bit of a curse, right? Because you see all these like trad families, right, where they have these like crazy traditions where they're like going out to the backwoods and cutting down a tree. But for us, it's pretty simple. Like we have like typical like Christmas mugs that we use only on Christmas Eve. Obviously, there's a whole Christmas Eve thing, or we get like Christmas pajamas for everyone, and those types of things. The Advent calendar, which is pretty classic.
Okay, nice.
But for us, and this I wouldn't say is a tradition, but more of just like something that we try and lean into is just kind of, and one thing we're leaning into, especially this year, is reframing like Christmas around like getting to giving. And so that's something new that we're trying to instill in our kids about like, what does it look like for us to talk more about generosity than we do about like, what's your list from Santa or whatever the case may be is. And for us, I mean, tradition wise, I would say we have like the typical mugs, pajamas, decorating the tree together, those types of things. But
the giving thing is really cool. One of my mentors was just telling me this story because he's got 3 kids, 21, and then twins that are 18. And so they had this tradition where they had like they called it like the world-changing jar or something like that. So it's a jar where like anytime the kids got money, they were always taught 10% goes into the jar. And it was purely for generosity. And what they would do is on Christmas Day, they would go to a Waffle, he's American, so a Waffle House or something like that. And they would basically take all the money in that jar and they would use it to tip their waiter, their waitress. He had these crazy stories of like these waitresses that would open up and he would say, let me guess, you need, $365, whatever the amount was that he had. And they'd be like, how did you, like, she'd be crying, like, how did you know that? And he would get to preach the gospel and all that. And now he said his kids go to Waffle House and they'll tip like $50 or $100 just because they saw them do it, right? So I've been really thinking about it. Like, so it's cool that you touched on that as well, just the importance of them seeing like to give back. It's not just about what you get.
Yeah, a friend of mine, they have a tradition around Christmas that we've talked about maybe getting to once our youngest is old enough to be out that late. But what they do is they all get in their like Christmas pajamas, I believe. They get in their car, they drive around and look at all the Christmas lights in their community, and they kind of have a score sheet and they vote on which house has the best Christmas lights. Okay. And then they go to the door, knock on the door, and actually just like give them the chocolates or give them the prize or whatever. And just a way of them to kind of appreciate a stranger or bless them in a season.
Oh, I love that.
They love it because they get to be in the car together and do something crazy. So
yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. So one thing I have to imagine that's going to come up a lot now in the future is guys wanting to lead at home effectively from a spiritual standpoint. Yeah. Like we know, obviously we need to be good husbands, good supports to our wives, good role models for our kids. What should guys be thinking about, like if they want to be good faith leaders? Because this is a question that I even get. We get it in our communities, but I even just get it amongst my friends of like, man, I thought I'd be doing devotionals every day with my kids, but I'm not really doing that. Or even praying at dinner time is like, oh, sometimes we forget, And everyone's different. I don't know if there's a particular framework you recommend, but what are things that guys can be doing to lead well from a spiritual standpoint at home?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, the old saying of like, more is caught than taught. Right, in the sense that like it has to be them witnessing you be a Christ follower at home, and so like some questions I would say is like, do your kids see you praying? Right, like oftentimes, I don't know about you, but like I tell my daughter not to do certain things, but she ends up just doing what I do rather than what I say. And so, do they see you praying? Do they actually see your Bible open and reading? Do they those things that they need to see you doing? And actually, I think it's Matt Tapley who preached an amazing sermon one time. I heard him talk about how like you don't do your devotions or your spiritual walk to be seen by others, but your family needs to see you do your spiritual walk, right? Like it can't be just like this thing, and like the prayer closet's great, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But your kids see you going to and fro.
Yes.
And so I would say it's got to be seen. I would say there's just some small, like there's some people that are really good at this, like Justin Whitmell early. I don't know if you've ever had him on your podcast, but on this topic, you really should. It's like just like talks about like the small rhythms, which he calls liturgies that you can do each day as a family. Yeah. It doesn't need to be a big thing. Like he talks about like a bedtime blessing where he just tickles them and blesses them, right? So it's like small things that you can incorporate that you do anyway. Yeah. That with just a little reframe could become like a Christ-centered moment. Yeah. And so for many of us, like what are the things, I talk about like bedtime, drive time, and mealtime. Those are 3 times that like you have an opportunity to show your leadership as a spiritual leadership. So
that's good. As a bedtime, drive time, meal time.
Yeah. So, even if you just hit one of those a day, and some of them are more like, obviously your 14-year-old son might not be interested in chatting at bedtime.
Yeah. Probably not going to tickle him.
Probably not going to tickle him. Scripture, but like at drive time, you might just ask some questions that are pointed and just maybe point them towards Jesus. Okay. And I think it's Jared Lopes who said something along the lines of like, to take the pressure off, it's not about like the 15-minute devotional time. It's the 15 1-minute devotional times that you have throughout the day. And so instead of putting the pressure on you as a dad, though this might work for some families, they sit around, they do devotions. That's awesome. If your kids are wired like that, that's amazing. My son would be like hanging upside down from the chandelier by his own doing. But instead of putting the pressure on to be like, I've got to have a devotional time each day, and it's just, you just know it's not working. Yeah. How can you take 15 1-minute segments of a day and just insert a Christ conversation? So for example, this summer I was at a barbecue where there was like a ice cream truck, and the ice cream truck was sponsored by one of the men in the church to kind of everyone to have ice cream. And I was with my friend, and his daughter came up and said, Dad, like pulled on his shirt, like why would one person like pay for everyone else to get something for free? And he just looked at me, he's like, gotta go. And I just knew in that moment, he's like, this was a gospel opportunity, right? Like he could have said like, oh, he's just a really generous man, but like he just reframed a moment that he was going to have anyway. It's like, you know what? Like actually that's exactly what Jesus did for us. He paid that we might actually have, the free gift of grace and salvation. So I think if you can be clever, if you can like reframe the moments you're already doing, like drive time, bedtime, and mealtime, even one of them a day or 2 of them a day, just to have a gospel-centered conversation goes a long way, because I think men do feel the pressure. Yeah. Right. And truthfully, we leave this to the females in our life to disciple our kids, and God bless them. God has created women to do that, but I just think men are too quick to kind of leave that to the partner. I think it needs to be both. Yeah. I love that. So bedtime, drive time, mealtime. Yeah, it's so good. And then what was the name of the gentleman you mentioned that got rhythms for this? So Justin Whitmell Early. He's got Habits of the Household.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's and I think he's got a new book about something else too. But he's also got around spiritual practices and rhythms and rules of life.
Oh, sweet. And we'll have to get him on.
Yeah,
I'd love to learn that. Yeah. As you look ahead, so you look at kind of the direction things are going in. We know there's a resurgence of men, kind of the thing that you and I have been praying for, right? Yeah. Like we've been wanting to see this happen. What are some of the things that Impactus is thinking about to support these men well for the next, 5 to 10 years? Obviously, AI is an emerging subject. Technology in general is just always going to be a big thing. But I know I feel like for me, I'm hearing about guys with financial stress and financial issues more than ever before. There's definitely a bigger wealth gap than ever before. I don't know, what are you guys envisioning, and what are some of the things you're getting ready for? Yeah, for us, some of the big things are really the small things, right? So it's like we are doubling down on our daily devotional more than ever. Like, we think obviously one of the greatest solutions to man's languishing or man's needs is actually just getting to know Jesus in a greater way. Yes. And so we're doubling down on our devotional and thinking of ways that we can get that into more people's hands. We're on YouVersion. We're like several 100,000 people. Unbelievable the reach on YouVersion. So that's really growing. We're so grateful for that tool. I don't know if you saw recently they talked about why they don't charge for it and the money that they could be making, and it's just amazing. It's amazing that you. I didn't see that. No.
Yeah, like billions. Like they're multi. They could.
Well, I heard they got valued at if they were that kind of company, they'd be billions of dollars.
So we're just very grateful for someone there that keeps the pulse on that to say, hey, no, this is a free gift. And so we're on YouVersion and so we're doubling down on that, and possibly, we're not. It's not official, but do we take our daily devotional online in regards to videos or podcast form and things like that.
Cool. Yeah.
We're also continuing to come into cities across Canada. So typically we're in Toronto, Ottawa, Edmonton, and Winnipeg, but we also have an event called Guys Night, which is basically like, if you're a men's leader and you're listening to this, Guys Night is basically a packaged event, an hour and a half, where there's typically 3 speakers with testimonies, and all you need to do is bring the guys to your event, and Guys Night will kind of run itself. And so basically it's meant to cause conversation amongst guys, and so you hear a 15-minute kind of like TED Talk message from a speaker, and then it goes back to the group at home. And so that happens in April.
Yeah.
And so you can keep an eye out for that as well.
Okay, sick. That's amazing, man. For people that want to find out more about you guys, links, podcasts.
Yeah, impactus.org. I mean, if you look up Impactus, IMPACTUS, like Impact Us, though that wasn't the thinking of the word Impactus.
Smart.
It kind of
worked out.
It does work out a little bit. So yeah, you can find us at impactus.org, and I'd be happy to connect you. And especially if you're like a men's ministry leader, we've got a men's ministry training that it's several modules that'll help you rethink men's ministry. And the 4 ways that we do that are, we want you to think wider. We want you to think deeper, wider, longer, and stronger. And so it's just 4 reframes of men's ministry, because most men's ministries, they just think, I have to run an event, I have to do the men's breakfast, and then we're good. It's like, well, what if we just reframe men's ministry to ministry to men, just discipling guys?
Yeah,
and if you can invite guys over to your house to watch the game, you can run men's ministry.
Yeah.
You can minister to men. So
I love that.
Trying to reframe that for the future generations.
That's amazing. Dude, thank you for your time, man. I'm glad we've got to finally do this.
Yeah, thank you, man. Hope it was helpful.
It was great.
Thanks.